So today we're going to start with exercise 208, and I think this is an interesting one because it's the first time where we're branching out of this scripted, this is what you're going to make. You're going to have some autonomy in terms of what you're picking and what you're going to make. I will go through a demonstration that shows you how I would go about doing it, but I think it's important that you start to break away from the scripted, follow this and do this and do this, because in the world of design, you're going to be coming up with your own stuff and you're going to have to be able to figure out how to make it. So I think this week is a really big week for you guys in your Rhino modeling. Today we're going to work from some sample drawings. We'll find those sample drawings online from some manufacturers, and we'll end up building objects that fairly resemble what they have and manufacture. So that's good because it's kind of a step into really freedom in terms of what you're making. So we'll make something that exists today, and then next class we're going to get into like soft cloth-like objects, pillows, those kinds of things that aren't rectilinear anymore. So we're branching our way into that, and so I think this is a pretty fun week to get through that. So for exercise 208, what I'm going to ask you to do is to browse to a manufacturer website, and I think the easiest type of object to work with here is a window or a door. They tend to be rectilinear. They tend to be fairly easy to make. And so those are what I'm going to encourage you to do. If you're more interested in doing a faucet or I don't know, something else, that's okay. But I think frequently starting with a window and door is pretty good to kind of get your feet wet here. I pulled up several window and door manufacturers. I don't care which manufacturer you go with, but I'm going to show you on these websites. They always have information for you. And so I pulled up Andersen Windows. You've probably heard of them before. And what you're looking for on any one of these websites is something called for pros or for professionals or professional or something in that vein, because generally that's where they hide the good stuff. All the pictures and whatever are for the consumer. We're looking in the pro section, and if we look in here, and for example here in Andersen Windows, under architectural tools, CAD, BIM, and CSI, those are what we want. We're looking for some CAD files to work from. And so when you do that, it brings up a list of all their CAD files. Now, if we switched over to Milgard, another window manufacturer, same thing. They have a For Pros section, and then they have a Drawings and 3D Models section. So it's called slightly differently, but they still have the same kinds of things. Here's another manufacturer, Geldwin. They have a For Pros section. Looks like they want you to sign in. So guess what? We're not doing them. So, and then, here's another one, Pella Windows. There's the For Professionals in Pella. They want to know who you are. Okay, we'll be architects for right now. Resources and downloads probably, and somewhere in here, specifications and CAD downloads. So all of these websites have this information. The manufacturers would love for you as an architect to spec their products. So they'll give you as much information as they possibly can to convince you to use their products. And so we're just going to take advantage of that when we start to create this. I should also point out, by the way, that it's not limited to windows. Like, for example, if you really wanted a toilet and you didn't want to have to go through and model a toilet, you could go to Kohler's website, for example. You could probably go to Toto's website, too. And in Kohler, if you went into bathroom and you said, I'm interested in toilets, that's great. Sure. We'll pick a toilet here. Come on, website. There we go. Great. I like this toilet. If you scroll down here, here we are. There's our CAD files. And guess what? 3D files. They have a bunch of different files that we could use from. The OBJ is the most generic file. That's the easiest one. I could download this OBJ, open it in Rhino, and that would be ready-made, put a porcelain material on it. Boom, I got my toilet. So I didn't actually have to make anything for that. So today, obviously, we're going to make things because it's the whole point. But when you can use something that somebody's already created, there's no reason not to use something. So not that you want a high-end rendering of a toilet, but the point is that that's pretty easy to put into a project. Easy to find, easy to put in. Same things exist with all the drawings. I could get an AutoCAD drawing of a toilet and put that in if I wanted to as well. I'm going to jump back over here to the Andersen site. And as you slide down here, they have all their various types of doors, windows, sliding glass doors. These are separated by their product lines. So their E series and their A series what's that, a 400 series, 200 series, 100 series. You guys get the idea. So there's tons of information. We just need to pick one based on what it is that you want to model. So maybe I want to work on a casement window. Sure, why not? I can come over here and I'm interested. The detail file might be interesting for you, but for our purposes of modeling, it's not that important. When we come over here to the 2D elevation file, that's pretty good. We want to download the AutoCAD version of it. So it's this DWG file, and that will then download it. If we wanted to do, let's see here, there's an in-swing door as something that's different. I could download that file. I'm just downloading a couple of these just so you can see when I go to open them. Do you have a question or just stretching? OK. So when I come back and I open up Rhino, we're going to bring in one of those AutoCAD files and take a look at what information they give us. So I'll choose the large object inches template. And with Rhino open, we're going to go to File and then Import. Now I have two options here. I could insert as a block reference, or I could just go ahead and import it. For our purposes right now, I'm going to end up deleting most of the stuff that's in it. So keeping it as a block for reference just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just import it. So I'll go to File and then Import. And those files were in my downloads. We'll go ahead and say Open. Now, these options here, almost all the defaults are fine. The only thing you want to pay attention to is that your model units are set up the same. I picked the large object inches template. The files that are coming from the manufacturer are coming in inches, so they're going to mesh up nicely. If something was different, if I was in the metric system and they were coming in inches, we'd get complications. So we just want to make sure that those match up. I'll go ahead and say OK. And that will drop these files in. So if I double click on perspective and zoom out, we can see that they gave me a whole lot of information. So they have different styles of their casement windows. Some of them have grids on them. I think this one has a different looking grid. Yeah. And so these are all the windows that they make, which is way more. I'm not going to ask you to model 300 different windows. We're going to pick one of the windows that looks interesting. So with these, let me go ahead and I'm going to start with a casement window because I think the casements are pretty easy. Go ahead and zoom in here. There we go. And oh, I'm missing some lines. Remember, that's a glitch in Rhino 6 for us. So let me go ahead and go into my Tools, Options, scroll all the way down to View, OpenGL, and I'm going to turn off that tessellation, and that will give me all of my lines back. That's good. All right, while I'm here, I might as well turn on End, Mid, and Perpendicular Snaps. And then I'm going to pick the size of the window. So these are the nominal 5-foot windows, so I'll stick in there, and I probably want like a 3.0. Where 3.0 is over here somewhere. It's like this column. So sure, 3050. It's that window right there. So I want that window, so I'll draw a box around that window and select it. It's possible that when you bring it in, maybe they grouped them, maybe they did some stuff to them. You might have to explode that particular window. I'm going to go ahead and move that object. So I just type in Move or go up to Transform and then Move. And I'm going to put that outside over here for now. Now, all the rest of this information really is irrelevant at this point. So we'll go ahead and select it all. Maybe I'll select it this way. And we'll go ahead and delete all of that. I can press the Delete key on the keyboard or type Delete. And then I'll go ahead and take my window here, and I'm going to move it. So once again, I'll go to Transform and then Move. And I'll come down here, and that corner I'll move to 0, 0, 0. Then I'll zoom, selected, and now I'm back right at the origin with my window ready to build. So if I come over here, we can see that they gave me a bunch of extra layers, some AutoCAD layers and whatever. We can clean that stuff up a little bit later on, but I can leave it the way it is for right now. Maybe I want to organize it a little bit. I could rename this layer 5 to be AutoCAD. And I could take these layers here that were all AutoCAD layers, stick them underneath the AutoCAD layer. That just kind of cleans it up a little bit. So now that I've done that, I have to think about how would I go about modeling this particular window. So I have some guidelines for what I'm doing, but I want to create surfaces. I want to make this three-dimensional. So how am I going to go about doing that? For me, I think the easiest strategy to start building it is to create a surface that is the size of the window. We'll start with just a simple surface. You could do the surface from 3 or 4 corner points. You could also do a rectangular plane right here. Either way, I'll snap from one corner, maybe, from one corner down to the other corner. And you know what? Let me see this in shaded mode so that I can see it. And there's that plane. So they gave me some information. They gave me this outermost frame, which is kind of like the jamb of the window. They gave me the window frame itself. They gave me where the glass would be. They also gave me where these little mullions would be. Well, it would be nice if I could start doing some extrusions based on those pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these lines that they gave me as guides to break up this big surface. I'm going to use a command called split to do that. So it's available under, I think it's under Edit and then Split, yep, or you could type split. And when you initiate the split command, the first thing it's going to ask you is what object do you want to split. So I want to split that big surface. I'll press Enter when done. And it says, what are my cutting objects? What do you want to cut that up with? So I'll cut it up with this rectangle that goes all the way around the outside. And I'll go ahead and hit Enter. Now when I do that, it's going to split the large rectangle into two things, the inner and the outer. I can now take just this outer piece, right there, and I could extrude that. So I could go up to my surface, extrude, maybe it's under solid. Extrude surface, there we go, straight. I could also type in extrude SRF. So now when I do the extrusion, don't forget though that I need to make sure that solid is set to yes. And then I need to know the thickness of my jambs. So in this case, I don't know, we'll do it at, we'll do a generic size. We'll do it at 6 inches. So I'll go ahead and type 6 inches. And that then forms part of my window. Now I need to build the window itself. Well, I can use the split command again. Let me go to Edit and then Split. I'll choose my object to split, which would be this surface. And I'll split it with that curve there. And I'll go ahead and press Enter. I could have done the split with both of them at the same time and split it up in multiple places at once. But I was trying to do it simple enough so that I'd repeat the process. But you could certainly do that. Now we need to extrude this surface. So once again, extrude surface. And this isn't going to be as thick, so maybe it's only 1.5 inches. Something like that. Now this glass is just a single sheet right now. I could go ahead and I could move it vertically so that it was at the center of that window. That might be nice. But really, glass needs to have thickness. And if it's going to render correctly, we need 2 surfaces to be able to render the glass correctly. So I'm going to take that surface that I have, and I'm going to offset it so that I get a second surface that's above it. So I'll go up to my transform, and I'll go to Offset. Maybe not. I type these in all the time. So yeah, it's under Solid and then Offset. Apologize. Select Surfaces and Polysurfaces to offset. I'll select that surface. Press Enter when done. When I do that, hopefully you guys can see it. Do you see all those arrows that appear? Those arrows are the direction that it's going to offset the surface. So in this case, they're going up. Notice also that I could choose both sides so that it's going up and down. And I could say, if I wanted to do it both sides, I would say, okay, what's the distance of my offset? So if I wanted the glass to be a 1/2 inch thick, half of that would be 0.25 or 1/4 inch. So I'm doing it both sides with a 0.25 distance. When I'm done, I'll go ahead and press Enter. Oh, I could also delete input, yes or no. that means do I want my original surface to go away? In this case, I do, because I don't need the middle, because I'm going both directions at once. Delete input is set to yes, and I'll go ahead and press enter. And it then gives me two surfaces. So there's the top surface, and then underneath is the bottom surface. It doesn't matter whether it's an enclosed polysurface. In this case, it was an enclosed polysurface. I have edges on it, but it doesn't have to for rendering purposes. So next thing, I probably need to move this window toward the outside of my window. So I'll take the glass, and I'll take the frame here. Let me go ahead and move it, V for vertical, and I'll pull it up so that it's even with the outside of the window. In all reality, it probably has a little bit of a reveal to it there. So let me move vertical, and we'll say maybe negative 0.25 inches. So it has just a little bit of a reveal to it. So I now have that established. There were these other pieces, these here, that were dividing up what the grids look like on the window. So if I wanted those grids, I could go ahead and I could create little mullions for those pieces. So let me go ahead and I'll use the box corner to corner to do that. And I'll just trace over. I could use a split. I could have done that. But in this case, I'm just using a box. And I need my thickness of my mullions, oh, I don't know, how about an inch? Same thing, box over here. We'll go from there to there, and we'll say maybe an inch. Right-click to repeat the last command. There to there, that would be an inch. And we will right-click from there. There. That was not right. Try that again. And we'll say maybe an inch. So what I end up with is these four rectangular polysurfaces. And I need to move those up so that they end up here in the glass. Let me go ahead and type move. V again for vertical. Now I'm going to snap to the center or the midpoint of one of these lines so that as I come up, I can reference the middle of the window frame. Because it's not letting me snap to it, I'm actually going to switch my view into ghosted mode, which allows me to kind of see in, and I can pick right there in the middle of the frame. And so now when I've done that, I can switch back into the shaded mode, and you can see that the mullions actually stick out from the windows on the front and on the back. If they didn't stick out enough or they stuck out too much, I can also use one of the transforms to scale the object in one direction. So if I wanted this to be more, I could go back up to transform, scale. There's 3 different scales available in Rhino. We only want to increase the thickness, so a 1D scale, only in one direction is what I want. And I could say, let's go from here to here, and I can make that the full thickness if I wanted to. I'm not going to end up doing that, but I'm just showing you that you could make that modification after the fact if you wanted. So these objects, however, right now intersect themselves. So see how this goes right through that object? Sometimes you don't want those intersections to happen, especially when you're doing a rendering, because you got 2 surfaces on top of each other. It'll get weird results during the rendering. So I'll take all 4 of these mullions, there, and there, and I will apply a Boolean Union, which over here is available. It's the 2 spheres that go together. It happens to be the one on top. And that will take these and make them into one object. So this is now one object versus 2 separate objects that overlap. And that'll improve the quality of the rendering long term. So what I've done is I've essentially created this window. And now it's time to get it up into the vertical plane and start to make some materials, put some materials on it. So I'll go ahead and select this window. I'm going to use my Rotate 3D. It'll be available in Transform, Rotate 3D. My axis of rotation will be along here, right along the bottom. My reference point will be right there, going up the side, and we'll fold it so that it is up in its vertical position. I might also take it and move it so that that corner is at 0, 0, 0. Right about like that. I could take the window, including the mullions, and I could rotate them so that the whole window was open a little bit. We'll say negative 15 degrees. And so that window has a little bit of an opening to it. That would just be an option. I could also add some trim to this window around the outside if I wanted to. Again, it depends on your building as to whether you want trim or don't want trim. I would go ahead and there's a variety of ways of doing that. If I started, let's say, with a rectangle with 3 points, I could say, okay, I want to go from right there to right there, and I want this to be 1.5 inches thick. Let me turn on ortho so it's staying nice and straight. There it is. I could then extrude that curve to provide the top of the window, so we'll do that at 5.5, something like that. Do the same thing with the sides. Again, I could do the rectangle. We could do 3 points here. I could come down here. This was 5.5, and this was 1.5. And then I could extrude this. Again, I want to make sure solid is set to yes, and I can say, okay, that's going to be right up to there. I could take this piece of trim, I could mirror it across the middle to make that piece of trim. Now this header really should go the whole distance all the way across. So I could just delete it and do a new one that goes from there to there with a height of 5.5 inches. Looks pretty good. Come down here. Maybe I want there to be a little sill underneath this window. So we can do the same thing. I'll do a box here from there to there. And maybe this is 5.5 inches again. Oops. I should have said negative, but we'll go ahead and just move it vertically down like that. Now maybe I wanted a sill coming out instead, so maybe I need to move this vertically by another 1.5 inches, negative 1.5. And maybe I want a little piece in here. So I'll just fill it in like this for right now. Then I can select this object and use that scale 1D again. So I'll go to transform, scale 1D, and I could say, okay, let's take this and let's make it stick out as a little windowsill. I don't know, maybe something like that. You guys see how I'm building that up? You might decide that you want the edge to be tweaked a little bit. So instead of having a sharp corner, maybe you want to do that chamfer like we did with the bridge file. So I could do a chamfer surface. My distance is probably only maybe 1/4 inch or so. And I could adjust that edge should I want to. So you got flexibility there. I'm not going to end up doing that, but you could. Likewise, on the inside of the window, maybe you want to do a little piece of trim on the inside of the window. Generally, the trim on the inside of the window has a different profile than just rectangular. So I'll go ahead and show you a strategy for doing that. The first thing I need is the profile of what the interior trim would look like. So we could do something as simple as start here. Let's see here. I went over 0.5. We'll go this way by, I don't know, 2.5. Sure, 2.5. And then we could come back to 0.5. Oops. Would help if I actually finished there. 0.5. Okay, so that's the profile. Maybe I want to fillet the corners. So I could do a fillet with a radius of, I don't know, 1/8, 0.125. And we could clean up that a little bit like that. So that might be one profile. Go ahead and join that together so it's one. Sometimes they have a little bit more detail to them. So let me do it again. This starts at 0.5. We'll go over by another 0.5. And maybe we'll come down by 0.0625. We'll come over by 0.065. And 0.5. So essentially, any profile that I can make is fine for what it is that I'm trying to do. And so I can take one of these profiles, I can move it so that it goes right up here to the edge of the window, like that. Let me rotate 3D, and I'm going to fold this so it's actually folding out as opposed to folding in. You guys see that one? Then to get this to, I'm going to use a sweep in here. I could do each segment separately, or I could sweep all the way around the outside of the window if I wanted to. To get the sweep to work all the way outside of the window, I need to rotate this down by 45 degrees so that I'm doing the diagonal profile as opposed to just the straight profile. So I might need to rotate 3D one more time. And this time we'll go 45 degrees. And now it's pointing down like that. Now it's just a sweep. You guys have done this before. We'll do a sweep 1. There's my rail. There's my cross-sectional curve. Enter. Say OK. And now it builds out the interior trim for me. Okay? So just another strategy for how you go about doing that. And so you end up with a nice piece of interior trim going around your window. All of this is optional. Remember, you're in charge of how much you're building today and what you're doing. So it's really, I'm trying to show you a variety of options so that you can get ready for it. Looks like I have an extra little surface here that didn't get deleted. Let's delete that so it's nice and clean. All right, it's looking pretty good. Now time for some materials to go on this particular file. So let me zoom selected so we're looking at just this particular piece. And we'll go ahead and bring in the V-Ray component. So we'll go ahead and open up the V-Ray asset editor here. We'll look at our materials. I'm going to go ahead and use some of these preset materials. First one would obviously be glass. I'm going to use the basic glass for this. So I'll drag this one over. There's glass. And I could select this object and just apply the glass directly to it, or I could spend a little bit more time and organize my file, which, if we're going to use this as a block, organizing my layers is a good thing. So let me change the default layer here to be a window. So I'll do a window. This was a 3050. And then I will start to assign things to layers below. So let's say this is glass. Let's say this is the mullions, which I'm not going to be able to spell. Sure, why not? This is the window frame. This is the trim, exterior trim. And I really should have one more layer here for interior trim. Now I need to make sure all of these are on their correct layers. So we'll take the glass and put it on the glass layer. So change object layer. There we go. My mullions will go on the mullions layer. Change object layer. My frame is going to go on the frame layer. Change object layer. My exterior trim going to go on the exterior trim layer. My interior trim going to go on the interior trim layer. Oh, and it looks like I forgot the jam. So let me get one more layer here for jam, and that's going to go on the jam layer. Change object layer. So I've gone through and I've assigned everything to its layer. These layers should all be sub-layers from the window layer itself. Just keeps everything nice and organized. Furthermore, at this point, I really don't need the AutoCAD anymore. So we'll go ahead and just delete the AutoCAD layer. Oh, it's got AutoCAD baggage left over. We can say yes to all there. Because AutoCAD came in with some blocks, we're going to go into the Edit menu, Blocks, Block Manager. These are all AutoCAD leftovers. We can select all of them and press the Delete key. There we go. Maybe we can delete this one now. All right, let's show 1,219 hidden block definitions. So useful for all of those. So before you do that, it's a good idea to save your Rhino file, which I failed to do. So I prefer not to build this window again, so I'm going to wait for a little bit. So bear with me, see if it comes back. While you're waiting, you can all start finding your file. Oh, no, it came back, so we're good. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to save this before I lose it. And I will put it into my folder for today. Perfect. Let me go back to those block definitions. Blocks, block manager, they're all showing there. I'm going to select them all, I hope. Maybe not. Maybe it's going to crash on me. Not sure. And then I'll go ahead and press the delete key. And it will take its time. All right, so I was able to get rid of all of them. So it took a while, almost crashed, but it didn't. Now I should be able to get rid of the AutoCAD layer. There we go, all together. So that's gone. So I've cleaned it up. So I have just my Rhino file that I built out with all their appropriate layers. We're going to go back into the V-Ray asset editor here. And we're going to take the glass, and we're going to assign that to the glass layer. So I'll right-click on glass and say Apply to Layer. And it's going to be glass right there. Then I need to find other materials that are going to be used in here. So it's probably going to be wood. So I'll get into the wood and laminate section here. And I need to look through and decide what kind of wood I want to use. So it's probably going to be one of the veneers, would be my guess. So it's just a matter of deciding which one. We'll use that one right now. And I'll take that veneer and I'm going to apply it to, let's apply it to the frame layer. So I'll right click and say Apply Material to Layer Frame. So you can right click and decide Apply Material to Exterior Trim. Apply to Layer. I'm not going to do it to the Interior Trim. Let's go to the mullions as well. And then maybe instead of wood on the interior, maybe I want some kind of like white paint. I'll use plastic for this. Let's see if they have white plastic. There we go. We'll try that one out. So I'll drop that one over here. Don't want translucent plastic. How about wall paint and wallpaper? This could be interesting. We'll do fine grain white. There we go. So I'll take that. I'll right click on it and say Apply Material to Layer. That will be on the interior trim layer. And it will be also on the, let's see here, jam layer. There we go. So now that I have all those materials applied, I need to go through and do my texture mapping. So we'll go back to my object here. Let me zoom selected. And I'm going to switch from the shaded mode into the rendered mode, so that hopefully I will see this as a rendered object. All right, not too bad. So now I need to deal with the texture mapping on all of these objects because they're not set up correctly. So in this scenario, this object here needs to have texture mapping. This needs to have texture mapping, etc. So let's start with this one. I'll go over into my properties. I'm going to go to the texture mapping right there. So this should be review from last class. I'm going to apply a box map to it. Come up here, first corner or just bounding box. I'll go ahead and do a bounding box of it. We'll do world coordinates and go ahead and cap it. Yes. Now that I've done that, I'll come over here. I think the x equals y equals z is a good place to start. It kind of shrinks the grain. Unfortunately, the grain is going this direction, and I really want it to go that direction. So this is a great place to bring up that mapping widget and to use it in conjunction with the gumball to adjust the orientation of my grain for my wood. Now, it might also need to tighten up a little bit. That's where this UVW repeat comes in. So I might add to the repeat maybe 1.5. And that then tightens up the grain just a little bit. Like that. The end looks pretty good, and that end looks pretty good as well. So those ones are pretty well set. It would be nice to reuse this going forward. So I can do that. I'll come down here to the piece that's on the bottom. I'll come back to the match mapping tool. And then we'll say select source object. I can come up here and pick the source object. And now this one down here will match the one that's up above. The sides here are similar to the top. So maybe I'll take the side and I'll do match mapping again to the top. But it's going the wrong direction. So here's an opportunity to show my mapping widget. Oops, let's hide the mapping widget there. And let's hide this mapping widget so we don't get them confused. We'll come back to this one. We'll show my mapping widget. And we'll change the orientation here so that it's going vertically there. Looks good. We'll come over here to copy this one. So I'll take this piece, match mapping to that piece there. So I'm going through and carefully considering how these materials should be applied. Now I'll run into a problem here on the windows because this window really would have separate pieces if it were made out of wood. One going across the top, one going down the side. I could draw in a line and split this frame so that I could texture map them separately. I could also just change the material to that interior white color or a white plastic and say, oh, this is a vinyl window or a white painted window versus a wood window. So you, again, have that flexibility to make those kinds of adjustments should you want to. So the simple solution would be to go back to my materials, open the V-Ray Asset Editor. I'm going to go back into the plastics. And let's see if they have a... They have lots of plastic leathers. There's a plastic white. Put that one there. I will right click on plastic white, say apply to layer. We're going to do the frame and we're also going to do the mullions. And now those show up as white, in which case I don't need to worry about the texture mapping. Likewise, the texture mapping on the interior trim and or the casing, those aren't going to matter either. So I've spent my time, I've got my texture mapping. Oh, I forgot this object here. Let me go ahead and match the mapping again. So we'll go to match mapping to this piece. We show the mapping widget. There we go. And so that it looks a little bit different, I'm actually going to rotate it down so it has a different texture right on the front. Same pattern, just slightly different. It won't look quite the same. Okay, so now that I've done all of that, it's time to go ahead and save this work. So I can go to File and then I can go to Save. That just saves my 3D file. But if somebody were going to use this down the road, it would be nice if we gave them all the materials to use it with, as opposed to making them find their own materials. So there is a way of exporting, including all of the materials. Now, we used the generic materials. We didn't use anything fancy, so theoretically, anybody who opened Rhino 6 would have these materials, and it wouldn't be an issue. But we can actually pack up the 3D file and all the materials into one zip file. And we're going to do that by going to the V-Ray menu up here. And we're going to go to V-Ray and then Pack Project. And we'll then choose to save that on our flash drive. And so this is a 3050 window. And it happens to be an Anderson, though I didn't follow that closely to it. I'll go ahead and click Save. And there we go. So it then packed the project. Now, if we went and looked at that file, that would be our packed file. Let me go ahead and extract it all. And you can see that it includes the 3D file, but it also includes any material-related stuff. So anything that I need to be able to recreate the materials are available in that file for me. We're going to talk through what all of these maps mean a little bit later in the class, so we'll come back to that. But for right now, at least you are aware that it comes with everything. We'll go ahead and close that down. Now it's time to test out and see how this really looks in a rendered format. So I've given you a sample file. It's available on the course website here. At the bottom of our exercise today, exercise 208 base file for test rendering. You can go ahead and download that file, and then we can open that file. And so this one already has an actual sun installed, though you guys aren't at that point yet. It has an infinite plane that's been installed, and this should give us a decent quality rendering to kind of test things out. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Edit menu. I'm going to go to Blocks and then Insert Block Instance. And I need to go find that file that I just created. So we'll go to my flash drive. And I could use the zip file version, or alternatively, I could use the one that I saved. Either way will get you to the same place. We'll go ahead and say Open. I want to link it as a reference. I'll say OK. I'll say OK here as well, and we'll drop it in to the scene, maybe right there. I'm going to move it up just a little bit for my rendering. We'll zoom selected on it. There it is. And now we can take a look at it in rendered format. So I'll open my V-Ray asset editor. That's good. And then we'll go ahead and start the render process here. So once this rendering is complete, I'll save the image, and I'll use that as the featured image in my post. So please take your time today, work through. It's going to take you time to get through this, learn, work through the process, start to think about how do I model it. And that's part of the reason that I'm giving you this, very open-ended, is you're now responsible to come up with the order of steps. I kind of talked through how I would go about doing it, but that doesn't mean it's the right way of doing it. So it's now time for you guys to start sorting that out. So I'm expecting that zip file to be uploaded today. I'm also expecting the materials to be applied, the texture mapping to be done correctly to scale, etc. And I'm expecting to get a final rendering out by the end of class today. So you should be able to finish all of this. I think it's a reasonable amount of work. So I'll turn you guys loose now, and you have the rest of the time to work.